President Trump proving that he does, in fact, mean business. And we'll see exactly what he's talking about later today. Since you're our special guest, Charles, I want to start with you because Saturday, February 1st was the implementation of the first round of tariffs. Right. And then the market didn't like it when it opened the following Monday. Then it got a little bit more used to it. We're talking about 25% import tariffs on steel and aluminum. And the market's hanging in there today. Market's hanging in there pretty good. And by the way, it was hanging in there pretty good in 2018 into 2019 when the tariffs were actually a reality. And oh, by the way, the worst time we've ever had tariffs since Smoot-Hawley, prices went down. It was the greatest deflationary period in American history. They did not go up. So it's really kind of nuts. You know, I was talking to some college students on Friday from Westminster. They're Blue Blazers, their investment committee. I loved it. So this is one of the questions that came up, and I say, listen, you go into a dollar store, right? You've got whatever. Let's just say you have $5. You're going to buy a beach ball and 2 towels. You're going to the beach. Beach ball is $5. The towels are $2.50 each. If the beach ball goes to $5.50, you're only going to buy a beach ball and 1 towel. I mean, you're not going to. People don't have a money tree in their backyard that prices are just going to be passed on to the consumer, because they can't just be simply passed on to the consumer. This is about reciprocal trade. And by the way, it's not just tariffs, right? I've got this beautiful chart I'm going to show on my show that shows other trade barriers, not just tariffs. Yeah. Because tariffs are going like this. People are going to say, why is he so upset? Non-tariff barriers have exploded, have absolutely exploded. They make it harder for us to sell it to our friends and our allies. Yeah. So this whole notion about this, it's not, we're chumps. We're being chumped. And the American public is, I don't know who that woman was who played the soundbite. She blew my mind. It wasn't Elizabeth Warren. Oh, my God. She's like is she some kin to her or something? I mean, she blew my mind. I mean, what is she talking about? There's going to be pain. Guess what? If you fight anything, there'll be a certain amount of pain. If you fight back against anything or anything that's unfair, there's going to be a certain amount of pain. How much do you want to endure for a prosperous future for our kids? Well, your name is Charles Payne, so I think you know something about that. But despite all this, Trump's job approval right now from Americans is pretty high, 53% approve. This is according to that CBS News poll. Only 47% are saying they don't approve. So when I think about China specifically, Taylor, you've got imports from China. Cell phones are the number one, $66 billion. Computers, electric equipment, toys, sporting goods, and appliances. To Charles's point, that's going to hit people where it hurts because that's what they buy.
I love that you brought up the approval ratings. The notes I read this morning says it's giving Trump some political capital, some will to do these tariffs, despite maybe some pain, because those high approval ratings. I also love that you brought up China. 30 years ago, back in 1995, China had 5% of global manufacturing. They're now up to 32. 1995, the West and their allies, we had 75% of global manufacturing. The U.S. today is now less than half. So it's the speed at which China has gotten there in 30 years. And just some more facts, and I think this is what Trump is trying to address. It's not a tariff here, a tariff there. I think he's trying to turn around that systemic decline, and one way in which he's doing that is through tariffs. Here we go. China, more than half the world's industrial robots are installed in China. China dominates shipbuilding with 80% export market share, over 200 times the capacity of the U.S. The number of 5G base stations installed in China at 4 million compared to 100,000 in the U.S. So they are crushing us when it comes to some of the most advanced technology. And I think that's what Trump is trying to change.
But what they're going to do, and there's a huge piece in the Wall Street Journal about this morning, is what they're going to do is they're going to go out. They're already starting antitrust investigations in China against U.S. technology companies. Right. They are going to go after American companies in China. This is how, it's a war. It's It's a war. Do we crawl over? Do we let them abuse us over and over again? Do you hear the numbers Taylor is telling you? Those numbers, attached to those numbers she didn't tell you, were human beings, jobs, all those jobs that are gone, all those kids that didn't grow up with a father with a job, now they're on fentanyl. They don't have any hope. This is much greater than Wall Street's bottom line. You know, the Wall Street Journal is always going to protect Wall Street's bottom line. This is about America. We got to think about how many times we've heard this conversation. China's going to eventually beat us because they played the long game. We played a 3-month game. Oh, it's going to hurt earnings. Earnings going to be down a nickel.
You know, I mean, if we want to stay on top and get back on top in some of these areas, we have to play the long game.
I think Charles makes a good point. By the way, we thought you might be a little tired after the Super Bowl last night. Charles is ready to go today, man. He has some thoughts.
I still don't know who that woman is. I got to thank her, though. She was better than coffee.
Yeah, she was great, right? All of a sudden, the left is interested in inflation and wants to get up and make speeches about it. But you make a good point, because with all of Trump's policies, and I think tariffs is part of this, especially with China, he's not playing for the next 4 years, actually. He's playing for the next 40 years.
Right.
And when you play for the next 40 years, you think about things like steel. China's got way too much steel capacity. They probably need to shut like 30% of their plants to balance out. They're not going to do that. Instead, they're going to export it cheaply to places like the United States and put us out of business. So I like that he's playing a long game here, and maybe because he's a second-term president, he doesn't have to worry so much about the next 4 years.
Well, he does have to worry. I actually would argue that he has to worry a lot. And I hear you guys on the long game. I think that's what he was trying to do the first time. He wasn't able to accomplish it because he wasn't reelected. We've talked about other policies as well. If for some reason a Republican doesn't take the White House after he's finished, and they just come like President Biden and reverse everything he's tried to do, then the pain's for nothing.
Guess what Biden did not reverse?
China tariffs.
Yeah.
He did not reverse. He actually made them stronger on certain technologies. He didn't reverse Trump's tariffs.
Okay.
He didn't reverse, and we also lived under Biden with Trump's taxes also.
But he wasn't moving forward with the agenda. He left those in place.
And he
Obviously,
increased
they were
some.
having a muted impact.
He could have cut them off. He didn't. Biden let those stay. And then he increased them on certain areas, right? I mean, and then, by the way, we also had the Trump tax cuts under the Biden administration. So, you know, all the economic glory that they would like to have for Bidenomics, a lot of that was a continuation of Trumponomics.
Yeah, I worry that you need somebody who isn't just going to leave something even in place at a minimum level, but that is going to try to advance the ball, which is what he's trying to do now.
You make a good point. He's actually got to win the next 4 and the next 40. My thought is Americans can recognize when somebody's doing something good for the long term, and they might reward him in the short term. I think that's the bet he's making.
And I know, for instance, Friday we saw the Michigan sentiment number and expectations for inflation were up. But that poll, the one with the 70% there.
The CBS?
Yeah, the one with the 70%, right? That's what he does what he says he's going to do, something like that?
I'll just read it. 70% what he promised.
Right.
70% says that he's keeping his promises, and 30% are saying no.
So on the campaign trail, the media pounded away that tariffs are going to hurt you. Every time they said Trump is running on tariffs, and the media told the American public, if Trump is in, we're going to have higher tariffs and your prices are going to go up. So the American public was warned. And they said, no, we want this guy in. I think people out there are more willing to whatever small, again, these aren't necessarily things that we need on a daily basis, right? I mean, I just don't necessarily need to go buy a computer on a daily basis. And by the way, the ultimate goal is to have an American company make them. And there might be American companies that make them now. And if their prices go up, even if they're a little bit more, people will start to...
Can I make one quick point? I'm sure we have to run. But I will say, you know, today we saw Defense Secretary Hegseth, we saw J.D. Vance, our vice president, as well as Marco Rubio. They're all heading to Europe. Why? They're going to be sitting down with NATO leaders. They're going to be sitting down with European Commission leaders. Why? Because they are tired of seeing the United States, to everybody's point, I think, on the panel, be taken advantage of by the Europeans, in particular when it comes to these heavy-handed, out-of-control regulations. And I'm bringing up again, you know, the fact that these are U.S. companies, are American companies that are suffering at the hands of the Europeans. I think when he started to talk about not the retaliatory, but the reciprocal tariffs yesterday, a lot of people were scratching their heads. This is the why. And the timing of this, and we should get the details tomorrow or Wednesday, the why is because he's got his entire team going over there for face-to-face meetings with the Europeans, and he's going to say enough is enough. It's hardball, but it's our hard.
But I love that point, that it's a 360 approach. It's not just targeting China. It's not just targeting the southern border. It's not just targeting Canada. It's got Europe. It's everybody. He is putting everybody on notice. And Charles,
we want fair trade.
Your point, I always say, the American people paid 9% inflation for the Green New Deal.
Right.
So for national security, I think they'd be willing to pay a teeny bit more.